All right, picking back up with supply from the demand videos. Remember, a supply curve is similar to the demand curve, but the slope is opposite. Do not get the two confused or you're toast. Basically, if you label a demand curve as a supply curve or vice versa, you're going to have problems. So we're moving into supply here. A major factor impacting supply is time. Kind of keep that in mind. We have these issues short run and long run. In the short run, a firm cannot easily change output. In the long run, they'll have more time and they can change output. What this basically is getting into is, let's think of it this way. An orange grower cannot do much in the short run about supply, can make changes in the long run. What if there was a change in demand where everybody wanted orange juice? A story comes out in the news, orange juice will keep you from getting cancer. That would cause the demand for orange juice to go up, but orange juice comes from oranges. Oranges grow on trees, and a supplier can't just magically make the trees produce more oranges. So in a short run with that kind of demand, they will not be able to meet supply. There will be shortages, prices will go up, but as time goes on, a supplier can plant more trees. When the trees mature, they'll produce the oranges, and they'll eventually be able to meet the new demand with a supply. So demand can change very rapidly. Supply is slower. There's things that get in the way of supply. Review that AC/DC video. It's a really good video. Here are the 5 things that can shift a supply curve: price of resources, number of producers, changes in technology, taxation and subsidies, expectations about the future. Hit that too. There's the video. Make sure you go watch that. Pause this, go watch it. AC/DC, demand and supply. This is the supply part. Price of resources will move supply curves. Use salt in the production of a sports drink called Nuke Active. Salt gets real cheap because of the discovery of a hidden salt flat. And you're using all natural salt flat salt in Nuke Active. How would that impact the supply of Nuke Active? Supply increase due to an increase in the amount of a resource. Price quantity, supply curve, making it number 1. Our new curve is S2. We have a shift to the right. Rightward shifts are always increases. There you have your increase in supply. Pink hippo milk becomes a hot seller. And yes, hippo milk really is pink. Look it up. A disease breaks out killing hippos, and illegal hunting's not helping, poaching either, limiting the supply of hippo milk. So if there's a demand and it's a hot seller, but something's getting in the way of you as a producer from getting your hands on this, the hippos, you got to milk your hippos or whatever. Supply decrease due to a resource drying up. We have the supply. I can't meet the supply because the hippos are dying because of this disease, or they're being shot or whatever. Rising cost, or rise in the cost of labor or raw materials, will always directly result in a decrease in supply. If auto workers go on strike, a factor of production, workers are a resource, and they want better health care and raises and all that stuff, you make cars. So if you divert dollars to them for health care, that's going to impact supply. I make cars, but my workers went on strike, and as a result of the strike, we've negotiated. I'm going to give them better health care and raises. That's going to take money away from my primary activity of building cars, and that's going to decrease the supply of cars. And so if you had a market in equilibrium, supply and demand, here's my market. Afterwards, my supply decreases from S1 to S2, and we see that there will be less of it from QE1 to QE2, and the prices will go up from PE1 to PE2 as a result of what happens. The number of producers moves supply. The more suppliers of a good, the more of it. Let's look at these goofy things here. You probably don't know what they are. They were called POGs. POGs are little cardboard circle things from the early 90s. Became super popular with kids. Kids collected them, traded them, played games with them. Lots of companies jumped in to sell POGs and POG knockoffs because they saw a company being successful. The original POG company, they're all generically referred to as POGs, but technically there was only one official POG company. But other companies saw them being successful with this, jumped in, made their own. It got so bad that you bought 12 packs of Coca-Cola at Christmas time. There were the Polar Bear and Santa Claus Pogs in there. Domino's Pizza would give you Pogs if you ordered a pizza with a Noid on it, if you even know who that character is. When the fad was over, the firms were discouraged from making the Pogs because there was no demand. The prices were going down. So this is one of those things that became toxic and nobody wanted after a period of time. Supply increased due to lots of firms making POGs. Let's try something else that you might relate to more than Pogs. Let's think about Red Bull. Red Bull came out with their energy drink. It was very popular. They were selling it. There was an increase in demand for it. They increased supply. Other companies saw this and they jumped in with their own energy drinks. You're thinking macro, and we're talking about overall the broad category of energy drinks with this. But as a result of other companies coming into the market with Monster and all that kind of stuff and NOS, you had an increase in the supply because there were companies encouraged to make it because there was money to be made. Changes in technology will move supply curves. Advances in tech can lower production costs, increase supply. Efficiency and productivity always increase supply. For a long time, Russia had oil locked underneath Siberia under permafrost, permanently frozen ground. They couldn't figure out a way to get it out of the ground and make a profit off of it. By the time they got it out of the ground, it was too expensive. There was no profit. But Russia now is part of the oil market because they have technology that allows them to get it out of the ground and get it out there to where they can make a profit. They can do it in a profitable way now because of technology, and that brings more oil overall to the global oil market because Russia can bring Siberian oil in there. Before the tech changes, there was no profit. It was just too expensive to try and do anything with this oil. So basically we see increase in supply as a result of this activity. Supply increase of cars because of robots painting them. It used to be they really had to hand paint cars with spray guns and stuff, workers on each side of the assembly line painting stuff. But now robots can do it, and we have better paints that dry faster and all that kind of stuff. So we have an increase in the supply of automobiles because technology allows us to do more per hour and more effectively, cheaper costs, all that kind of stuff. Taxation and subsidies also move supply curves. In fact, lots of forms of government activity are going to impact supply. We're also going to see that the government's what causes those changes in quantity demanded, those changes in price only when curves aren't shifting. But right now, let's just look at the government can encourage and discourage entrepreneurs by raising or lowering costs of production. One of the things is regulation. Usually there's something some interest at risk with this, but regulation is a government intervention into a marketplace. Let's look at the environment was harmed by exhaust from cars, so they started making the car makers put pollution controls on cars, catalytic converters, smog pumps, all that kind of stuff to make the cars less polluting. Switch to unleaded gas came in the 70s with this and everything. But if you build cars on an assembly line process and you're forced to add parts, which are going to be better for the environment, but you're forced to add parts, you're diverting money away from your primary activity to buy these parts, and you got to figure out on your assembly line, which there's going to be costs in there on, where are we going to add these to the cars, at what part of the assembly line, you got to retool it. Basically, all these factors are going to play into the fact that it's going to cause a reduction in supply, which you can overcome eventually over time with technology and stuff, but it is going to be an issue. Import restrictions are when you bar or limit a supply's entry into a country. Why? It's usually political reasons. We're mad at some countries, so we don't let them send their stuff to us at all, or we limit how much we let come in. If we got mad at France and decided that we wanted to hurt France by limiting the importation of French berets, there would be less of them because the government's saying we're not going to let them come in the numbers. France wants to sell them. We want to buy them, but we're going to limit the amount that comes in, and it's going to decrease supply. Taxation, if you raise taxes on the profit of a company, that means they give the government more money and have less to spend on current products and future products. It says of in there. That's a typo, but I'm not going to fix it right now. Taxation, you tax a company, you're taking money away from them. They're not going to be able to do the great things they did before, possibly, so you'll see a supply decrease. And this is the very Arthur Laffer thing. You cut taxes, they might spend the money coming out with new products, retooling, becoming more efficient, doing capital deepening, that kind of stuff. Excise tax is sin tax. That's tax on the production or sale of a good. Why? The item is considered harmful in the eyes of the government. But what's interesting is cigarettes and beer have sin tax. It's kind of a revenue thing. They raise the beer wine tax a couple of cents. It's really not discouraging people from buying the beer and the wine. It gives the government some more forms of revenue. Sin tax and excise tax can be kind of controversial, but you just got to understand that subsidies and excise tax and stuff can impact stuff. Subsidies are when the government makes payments or loans to support a business or a market and impact supply. Why does the government do this? Protect society and culture. Which would you rather run for profit, Dallas Museum of Art or Six Flags? The government sends taxpayer money to the Dallas Museum of Art local government does to keep the doors open because they don't have the kind of customer flow Six Flags will. We think it's important to have culture, so we use money and they don't have to worry about selling tickets and producing, even though producing isn't really what a museum is going to be about. Protect young industries. We might send them money so they don't have to focus on production, so they can become more productive over time and more competitive. Protect from foreign competition. That's usually a prestige thing. Basically, we always talk about in econ classes about how sometimes the government will bail companies out, sometimes they won't. If a company is getting a subsidy, they don't have to focus on producing as much. A lot of the green industries get subsidies because they're young industries, and we hope they're going to grow in development, and we don't want them to have to focus completely on production, so we give them money so they don't really have to produce as much. Keep prices high. The government doesn't want to see certain goods or services become so cheap that nobody can do the activity. Farmers, quote unquote, will be paid not to farm, so the price of agricultural goods will not go too low. It's really weird is when you have bumper crops and like strawberry plants are producing lots of fruit because there's lots of it and it's of good quality. The price actually goes down because there's more of it. And when the crops are bad and don't taste as good, that's actually when the prices are up higher. It's really weird. But if we have bumper crops and there's tons and tons of strawberries out there and the price is going down because of the sheer volume of them, we may pay farmers supposedly not to farm or do these things, pay them money so that we won't let the price go down so low it's not profitable for them to be in business. Basically, if the market's flooded with cheap goods, farmers will not make money, and why keep the land as farmland? But there's a bunch of stuff, and you may or may not disagree or agree with this, but Stossel goes into subsidies. This is kind of an older video, but I want you to pay attention to what is not subsidized. I think that's kind of one of the important things with this video, but this is where I'm going to cut this one off, and I'll catch you on the next one.